Hello and welcome to another tutorial with QA-Automan. Today we're going to be talking about groups and running groups in testng.xmls. If you notice, I'm using a new IDE, IntelliJ. A friend recommended it to me. I started using it. I was against it, and as the more I used it, the more I loved it, and now this is all I use. Um, Eclipse is just as good. It doesn't matter for these tutorials. Use whatever IDE you want. So let's get started. So before, in my last video about the testng classes, I was talking about depends on method. One thing I didn't mention, if you were in your class and you wanted to say just run fill out password, if you right click and run the fill out password field test, because it depends on email field, it will call email field. And because email field also depends on load page, it will call load page. So it ran in that order. So in the future, when you try to debug and you have a long dependency line, uh, it will run everything above it. So just keep that in mind when you write tests as well. So let's say we have our tests and we want to start grouping them. And when you run your regression, you don't want to run all your tests. You just want to run the important ones, say things that are P1. You can add groups by next to test, you in parentheses type in groups equal, and we'll call this group P1. And then these fields, we'll set these to P2. So within the brackets group, we'll call this P2, comma, and we'll just copy paste this, put this down below, and there you go. With groups as well, let's say you have P1s, P2s. We also divide our tests in types of tests. So we can call this one page loads. And this one is a field, we'll call these field tests. It's probably not what you would do in a real life situation, but just for the purpose, field tests. You can add as many groups as you want in when adding to each of these tests. So we have our groups. Now we want to execute these groups. To do this, a good way would be using a testng.xml. And it will look something like this. This part up here, adding this makes it so you can autofill with the tags in the IDE. So I can add test, and I close this under there's listeners, whatever it may be. Really useful. It's the point of an IDE, right? So in our testng XML, we have a suite, and then inside the suite you can have your test, and then inside the test you have your groups and your classes, and it goes on. The list goes on. But we'll start from the top. So with suite, what's the entire suite that you're running this XML. In this case, we're going to call it our login tests. Of the login tests, we're going to have our two tests. We're going to have our P1s and our P2s. So we'll call these one P1 tests. Test. And then after this, we'll have test, and this will be our P2 test. And then in our test, we can run by classes, and then we can run by groups. Because we've set our groups, we're going to use groups. So you groups, and you're going to run, because you want to run those groups, and you're going to do an include. So of these groups, you want to include P1. That's what we named them. So now our groups are running P1. However, we need to tell the project what classes are we going to be running of all of our P1s. So we need to specify our classes. So in classes, we'll call class, and then we'll name our class. In this case, it's com Facebook tests login. So com.facebook.tests.login. And we'll do the same for this test 2 as well. We're going to do a little copy paste magic since already ran through the first one. However, we're going to be calling P2s. So P1's login test, P2 login test. So now when we run it, thinking, oh, okay, so we're running into a bit of an issue, and I'll explain what the issue is here. When you're running a specific test, it will rely, for example, we have P1 for load page. Well, it needs to run before class, right? We need to set up our driver, which is important. With P2, we're depending on load page, which is also not specified. So you have to remember to, when you're creating your groups, if something depends on another, you have to add that test. So first off, with before class and after class, these are required for all of our tests in our class. So it's always required. So our keyword is always. So always run equals true. This is a parameter you can set for this annotation. So you can say anytime this class is going to be running a test anywhere on this class, it gets instantiated, run this. And before and after class, we always want to run. This will solve one of our issues. The other issue is that the P2, oh no, there was no other issue. I apologize. That worked as I intended. The reason why I didn't need to set anything for this test for load page, because this requires load page, because we have the depends on method. We could have done the same. We can do depends on methods, and then we could have specified this guy setup, and it have worked fine. But really, this is a better solution because you always need setup and you always need teardown. That's very important in your tests. So always run for your before and after classes in most cases if you're going to start using groups. So you have your groups and you're running your P2s and P1s. Another cool thing within this class, so we're running in this class, take off the self-closing slash. Inside class, you can say, I want a specific method excluded from the test. I don't care about the password field. I just wanted, cared about the email field for some reason. So now when I run this suite, it will run my P1s and then it will run my P2s, but not my fill out password field. And this is a good way just to kind of narrow in on specific parts of your test suites. You can create as many XMLs as you want. For example, I can rename this. Where's the rename? Refactor. Here it is. Rename. And this one's our login test. Why unable to rename? Why are you unable to rename? Just do it. Okay. I'll figure out this issue. I'm not going to do this now. But that is pretty much a high-level view on the XML and our logins. Just so we covered adding groups, as many as you want. It doesn't matter. You can group them however you need. Careful not to add too many. It will get a little crazy. You go group crazy. Inside our testngs, you have your suite. You have tests, your test name, which is the name of the test that you're running. You can run by group. You can run by class. You don't actually need the group. I could explain. You don't even need to run. You can just run by the entire class if you want. If you have multiple classes, you'll run np1 test all those classes and all your tests inside them. Um, Same thing with the methods. You can exclude and exclude the ones you want. You can really customize your tests. And yeah, this will conclude our tutorial today on groups and testng XMLs. Until next time, happy QAing.